Good day. Good evening. We're going live as soon as Hayden shows up. Zen. Hope everybody had a good day. Feel free to drop a comment in the chat if you had a good day. Let me know how it went. Did it go good? Was it good? Medium? Not so good? You always got to fix your color before you go live. I did the lighting this time. No viewers yet. Now we suddenly have 2. Welcome to the 2 that are in here. I guess I should start listening. I'm waiting to be accepted, to be one of the accepted ones. It's a timing thing. We got, just so you know, on Twitter, we've got Dank, Crypto Nuts, Mikey G, Crypto J, somebody, H3RMES, John SA, and Charles. Good evening. Here by the host. Muted by the host.
Can you hear me all right?
Let's see.
How you doing, Banana? Can you hear me all right?
No, I'm muted. My mic is off. Let's see. Ah, there we go. I can hear you good. Now you're muted. It's mute tag.
How was your Monday?
It was good. You know, it was like the background of my life was like rough, man. But top of mind for me is, it's like I've told some of the guys, like I hold crypto A, so I'm really good there. I hold pTGC, so I'm bulletproof, man. You can hardly hurt me. So the background of my life was pretty rough, but all I could think about was pTGC, honestly. And I'm going to tell you what, man, it gives me a lot of hope. I'm so excited about it. How was your day?
It was good. I guess maybe a little bit the same. A couple things came up at work, but we just keep moving forward towards the goal. And really, I'm in construction, so there's always a new problem every day. So I'm pretty used to it. Just roll with the punches.
Yeah. When you're in construction, you got to be like a master at that, rolling with the punches. You got to be creative. So I just pulled up the chart. pTGC is, let's go by market caps, $32.7 million market cap. It's still crushing it. And it costs now 3 PLS per pTGC.
Yeah, that's crazy, huh? Because just a month and a half ago or something, we're celebrating hitting the 1-to-1. And just like that, we're 3-to-1 now.
Yeah. Let's see. 1-to-1 happened on, give me a second, the 26th of August. Dude.
Okay, so less than a month and a half. 3 weeks or so. Yeah, 3 weeks.
Yeah, 3 weeks. Oh, that boggles my mind, man. That's such great performance. One of the things, I gotta not use that chair because it squeaks. And just so you know, guys, I have been asked to mute or suggested that I should mute my mic, and I would like to. However, because we're on Twitter and YouTube, it's an impossibility. So thankfully I have a quiet office with relatively no interruptions, and I'm switching to a less squeaky chair. So that should help.
Yeah, that's hard on you. You have to be perfectly quiet the whole time. You're a trooper.
Yeah, thanks. Well, if anything's making noise, it's like my clothing, you know what I mean? How clothing makes a little bit.
So I was at work. Sometimes I'll throw on like YouTube or whatever. I'll listen to all types of stuff. But when I'm bidding jobs or just going through my emails or just doing that kind of stuff, or just the management process of everything. And I had a YouTube video on that my YouTube algorithm recommended it to me. It was the Eric Wall RH video.
Okay. Yeah.
You ever watch that one?
Yes.
Yeah, there was like a couple just key points in that argument that just like recently I've been like listening back to a lot of the stuff, and really a lot of the design of pTGC was created 2 or so years ago. So when I rewatch these videos, it reminds me of like some of the things that I was paying attention to like heavily back then. Like when RH was talking, I was studying like every sentence out of his mouth. Recently, I just tagged or posted a video that someone else posted. It was like a minute clip, and just in that 1 minute clip, I heard like 3 main features of pTGC listed when RH was talking, and it's like just a reminder of like how many things we had to pick up on and include in the code of pTGC. And just today, it was funny because RH was debating with Eric Wall about crypto and what's needed with projects, and they're talking about a transactional currency versus a store of value. And the US dollar is actually not that bad as far as a transactional currency, but it's a horrible store of value. So if you use it for transactions, it's fine. We got debit cards, credit cards, but if you use it as a store of value, it's literally the worst thing ever. So RH was talking about how a lot of people try to fix transactional currencies with crypto, mainly because it can be a world currency instead of just in the United States, and it can't get like blocked by your bank and stuff. But that was never really the intentions of RH. His intentions was more store of value. And this is a lot to do with because a lot of the success of Bitcoin came from being a store of value, not really the transactional currency. We use it for transactional currencies in some purpose, but a lot of the value that's became of Bitcoin came from the store of value because of it being an asset. As you know, as governments keep printing funds, the US dollar goes down, but these store of values go up because the more the United States prints money, the printing of the money actually keeps pushing the price of these assets upwards. And when he was talking about this, he was talking about how Hex was this as well. It's more of a store of value, not really made to be a transactional currency. And it reminds me of like, that's what we are too. We're just a huge store of value. We were never intended to be a transactional currency. Really, a lot of the currencies out there aren't that bad as far as a transactional currency, but they're horrible stores of value. So that's a huge problem that exists that we're trying to solve here on blockchain. And, that was just something I thought was interesting, in that video.
Yeah, that is interesting. I have not always, but it's been in my mind that you have crypto currencies, which I don't use those. And then you have what I call crypto assets. And I think that there's a difference. And it might be subtle. And I think there's probably like a gray area right in between. those two definitions, but I look at like the assets that, like pTGC and UFO, those aren't a currency. Well, I'm not transacting with those. We aren't, but they sure are an asset. That when we take profit, we'll flip out into a transactional currency, but the asset, I'm not transacting in. Does that make sense?
Definitely. You're using it as a store of value.
Yes. Yep, exactly.
What's up, Crypto Kong? How are you?
What's going on, guys? Can you hear me okay?
I hear you perfect.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm doing good, man. How's everyone doing?
Good. Starting the week. It's Monday. Mondays are a little bit quieter for us on these pTGC spaces, but still a good day. We wanted to offer the time in the afternoon and the time in the morning because some people can't make both. So
true. Yeah, no, I was telling Ferrari that I like what you guys have going on with the spaces and stuff, because I've seen it in the past where when coins have their peak, some of their peak appreciation is when you have the community there. Like, for example, I'll bring up Icosa. They used to do spaces and stuff, and I think that was like probably prime time back then. So yeah, it kind of reminds me of that a little. So yeah, like I like this setup a lot. I think it's extremely valuable to have the community here. So yeah.
Yeah, we spend so much time involved in this ecosystem. Sometimes it's good to just talk about it with your peers that are also on the journey with you, right?
Yeah, that as well, because I don't know. Swami says it's I think right now he says it's PvP, but there is like the education aspect, right? And everyone's who's in Pulse Chain right now down here at the lows, they've probably done a bit more research than like your average crypto user. And I think just putting up education for things like pTGC as well, because I could even tell by doing a couple streams with you and just watching a couple streams with you, like you understand the R8 ideals, and like I think it's represented well in pTGC. It's a good system, right? So like just the education now, and I think a lot of the people I think it resonates with a lot of people, because I was posting on my Twitter even, I think it was earlier, maybe it was last night, but pTGC and UFO they're some of the top tokens right now in terms of holder appreciation. So the amount of new people actually going in there, probably hopefully doing their research, picking up the tokens, and just like gaining more adoption. So that's nice to see. There's a lot of I'll say some of the orange coins haven't been gaining holders. In fact, they've been losing holders. So yeah, it's keeping crypto exciting, pTGC and UFO right now. I think like even Bitcoin's been pretty much back and forth between 60 and 50,000 for the last little bit. So there's nothing much. Feels like there's nothing much going on besides like the few things on Pulse Chain that are taking off. There's probably more, but I think even there's plenty of examples with the meme coins even slowing down nowadays. Even like what was happening before on Solana and stuff. It's not the same. So
yeah, the player versus player topic I find very interesting because I actually look at the whole world this way. All of life is a game, and you're technically against everyone else to a certain extent. Like just the whole idea of you never really make money, only the government makes money, or not the government, but the Federal Reserve, we all take money, so you have to find ways to technically take money from another person. And that's usually done via service, right? And I feel like we're all in this big game of player versus player, not only in crypto, but just in life. One thing I find interesting about crypto, though, is it's almost similar to a business in ways because it doesn't have to be singular player versus player. You can actually have a whole community against other communities. Hexicans is a pretty big example of it. And I think it's interesting when people in the community become somewhat benevolent, by locking up their shares for additional APY, just like how you lock up Hex and, so on and so forth. And you have Richard Hart, who's been benevolent towards his community. It makes his players stronger. So then they're able to beat other players out as far as this game of crypto goes. Because you can look at singular tokens as player versus player. You can look at singular people within one community versus player. Because within a community, there's always people who sell at a better time and buy at a better time. But you can even start taking it steps back and say, like, the Gray's currency possibly versus another set of tokens on the Pulse Chain ecosystem. That could be a player versus player in a way. Personally, I don't really like talking about other tokens. I think they all have, great communities. I think every community has pros. I think every community has flaws, and it's not really my place, I think, to say opinions about others. I just like to say, like, positive things about our ecosystem necessarily, but like everything's kind of player versus player. And right now, I will try to look at our player versus player. That's the most important, is Pulse Chain versus technically adoption versus other blockchains, right? That's what our ultimate goal here is to get adoption through Pulse Chain. And we're all on a team versus other teams.
I don't know if this is like a good analogy or not, but it kind of reminds me of like a football team or something, where you have the community, and the community can infight, they could fall apart, they could all like ruin the price chart, right? If there's people in the community, like if there's members in the community who want to do that, or if you kind of like not work together in a sense, but even how PTGC is designed, it kind of incentivizes you to just like be a bit of a benevolent player, right? And there's no inflation. Not that inflation is the worst thing in the world, but it's nice to have something that deflates, right? And Pulse Chain, where we are right now, there can be, but where we are right now, it's slightly inflating. So it's cool. It's cool to see things like UFO and pTGC have some of those different tokenomics and stuff, because I don't know if PulseX if that buy and burn tokenomic has to do something with the ratio. As of right now, I think last time I checked, it was just over 0.5. So one pulse can get you 2 PulseX. Before it was like 1 pulse got you 4 PulseX. So I wonder if the buy and burn function, or if the more deflation of PulseX has anything to do with that, but I wouldn't be surprised. And you have the yield on top of that with pTGC as well. So I don't know. I think it's kind of cool, but yeah.
You want to know something really interesting about PulseX? So PulseX was one of the tokens I studied pretty heavily in the design of pTGC. And at the time of me really studying it, PulseX still had the idea, which it might still have, I'm not saying that's out of the question, it's just we haven't been given it yet, is the single-sided staking. And pTGC has the buy and burn and the single-sided staking built into the code, and we've been taking advantage of it for 11 months now. And I still see people complaining, like, where's the PulseX single-sided staking? And I'm like, guys, we've been single-sided staking here for 11 months, and it's been going great.
He's got a point. The price chart of pTGC, especially versus WPLS, it's quite incredible. Especially we've seen so many scams, right? And pTGC, I think it's coming up on 1 year, right? So it's not. I think Pereira was saying, like, it's not a new kid on the block, right? Like it's not I don't even want to name these tokens that we all know, right? We've all heard about it. We've all seen it on Twitter, but countless, probably more than you could actually like count, right? So yeah, to have something like pTGC, especially where we are right now in Pulse Chain, it makes it feel a bit more alive, right? Like gives you that hit of dopamine. So it's appreciated.
Yeah, it's literally just a math equation that's designed to keep pushing the price up. It's really simple when you break it down. If you think about the idea of if anyone on Pulse Chain believes Pulse Chain is going to be successful due to math, pTGC has to be more successful. And there isn't really much you can do about it. It's just an equation that's just running in the background via the code. And as Pulse Chain becomes more successful, pTGC becomes more successful. Because when Pulse Chain becomes successful, everything that our web is connected to in terms becomes more successful, which then amps up volume and volatility, and we charge that and push our price up even more. On top of that, I feel like there's, and this is an opinion, I feel like there's less of a sell wall in the future with pTGC compared to a lot of RH tickers, because I think personally there's a wall of people that are still just looking to get return on investment or twice return on investment on RH tickers, which I think will be a level that we kind of have to push through. And mostly anyone that's in pTGC is in profits at this point. So we don't have to fight a sell wall after we hit a certain level. And then I also look at pTGC as like a store of value in the sense of the idea that the community really recognizes that by holding the project long term, you're holding up the price of the protocol. And the higher we hold the price of the protocol up, that makes our liquidity pools bigger, right? Because you're not taking the money out. And the higher we keep lifting the price up, the liquidity pools grow bigger, which makes it so the arbitrage bots have to trade more value to fix the price. And if they have to trade more value to fix the price, that buys and burns the token more, that adds more LP, and it pays you more APR. So by you being benevolent to the system is now benevolent to you back. And there's just not a lot of systems that have been designed like that to take care of the people that are taking care of the system, just via code.
That's a very, very, very good point. Like that is an extremely good point for anyone listening. Like there isn't many coins with the main incentive for what you want to do with the coin, whether it's like staking or whatever incentive there is for you to buy the coin. There isn't very many projects that also benefits like the project itself, right? Usually what you're incentivized to do is like, you could say extract value, so to speak, right? But in pTGC, the way you're incentivized to sort of play the game, it's actually net positive for the whole project. And there's not, if you're looking for a good system, that's one of the most important metrics you need to go off of. Well, and then we can go into other tokens, but
you don't have to even like look into the future of like, hey, this is when max inflation will come. I'm worried about this inflation to come out and this people to sell on me, so I'm going to beat these people to the punch. I believe that's kind of a worry. And this isn't even with inflationary tokens. This is just even with tokens that aren't incentivizing you to hold. So a standard token, you don't usually make money by holding it. Bitcoin, for an example, Ethereum, for example, Hex, for an example, literally pretty much 99% of crypto, you are not incentivized to hold the token. So once the token runs up 100x, every big player of that token needs to make the decision, right? Do I continue to support this project and hope no one starts selling out before me? Or do I start dumping my tokens now to beat these guys to the punch? Because I actually don't have an incentive to hold this token any longer. The only way I can make money is by actually selling my initial purchase onto the chart. But the code of pTGC and UFO and pretty much all of our connected tokens, there is systems put in play that you know that every single day you're going to wake up and there's less supply and more tokens in your wallet. And on top of that, those metrics will help the price go up. So you can actually sleep comfortably knowing, okay, there's this machine working in the back end, helping pushing this price up. So the longer I hold, my value actually should keep increasing. And I receive more tokens in my wallet, so I'm making APY. And those more tokens are coming out of a supply that's constantly decreasing. And then that kind of creates a loop. Because when you say, okay, well, I'm getting paid more tokens, and those are coming out of a supply that decreases, well, then that means those tokens have to come from buying up the chart. Well, then that buying up the chart makes the price go up, and you create a circle. You know what I mean? And then that makes these investors, or whatever you want to call it, community members, feel secure about holding up the price, which then just supports everyone. That supports the people that have been here for a year. That supports the people that got in today, because it creates a safe, sustainable ecosystem for everyone to win. Since we make money off of the volume and the volatility of the ecosystem, it doesn't have to be me versus banana. It can just be us standing here as a team, supporting the ecosystem, making money off of the market's volatility in general, which is very unique as well.
And you have even with UFO as well, there's even more like positive feedback loops, like what you're describing. So like, and I personally, pTGC on its own was already incredible technology, but I don't even know if I quite comprehend what UFO could do to pTGC, because as I understand, during some of these volume periods that we've been having during this price appreciation, UFO's been paying out, or it's been helping buy and burn more pTGC than pTGC is buying and burning pTGC. Is that wrong, or I thought I heard that metric somewhere.
That was correct until this last probably week and a half. The last week and a half, pTGC's had a pretty decent amount of volume. So I wouldn't say that's true for the last week and a half, but for the 2 months before that, that's 100% accurate.
So there you go, guys. And like UFO, it kind of like it looks like to me like a bit of an accelerator, right? Like you tune the car now, so it's a bit faster or something like that. But it's quite interesting. I think UFO it's kind of new technology, so to speak. Like I don't know if I've seen something like pTGC and UFO. Like I've seen like separate ideas of like liquidity bonding, buy and burns, deflation, but to have something like kind of wrapped all together in one, plus you have the LP yielding on UFO, which is a wonderful idea, right? Because you're, again, how we were describing earlier, you're incentivizing people to participate in a way that also incentivizes the whole system. That happens in UFO. And then you even get more positive feedback loops, like what TGC was saying with the, like with all the buy and burn functions. And when you have like UFO going to interact with like buying and burning pTGC on top of what pTGC would have already been doing, right? So yeah, I want to see the liquidity webs on UFO get extremely thick. I don't know, like I don't know how high UFO can go, but I think I'm gonna have to like work on some stuff and figure out like maybe some models with UFO and whatnot to get some.
Yeah, something interesting about UFO is the fact that the market cap is so small, but the liquidity web is so big. So I think someone added up all the liquidity pools a couple days ago, and it was like $3.5 million of liquidity. And it's like a $5.5 million market cap. And that's not with like junk pairs. That's with like the top tier RH tickers too. The crazy thing that I find is if you hold UFO, you're going to make all the X's and APY. but if you LP it, obviously impermanent loss comes into place. So I look at LPing it as like, hey, make that your lifelong passive income bag. Like if you believe in Pulsion and its decentralization, like, you know, our DEX is our IPFS. We're pretty much the most decentralized blockchain out there. If you believe in the long term, create yourself a PLS miner for the rest of your life. Like put your LP in there, get your UFO, get your RH ticker in there. Don't give a rat's ass about the impermanent loss. But if you care about X's, you can hold UFO, earn APY, and all the people who are planning on keeping their LP there long term are now working for your bag. And all you have to do is just chill with your UFO, because you're going to get UFO reflections. You don't even have to interact with a smart contract. And you know that there's $3.5 million now working for you. And that $3.5 million is backing the price of your UFO tokens as well, because it's adding to the buy and burn, and you have tons of liquidity to exit out into if you ever decide to.
Liquidity I think for me, that's one of the most important things I look for in Pulse Chain. If there's a lot of liquidity, but let's say it's all tied to, I'm going to call them air tokens, which are things that aren't like what TGC is talking about, core RH tickers. Because they're not as like, you can't turn them in as easily for dollars, right? But when you look at things like UFO, if you understand Hart's law and you've studied it, you've seen it work in practice, you've seen it happen with pTGC, and you think Pulse Chain's bullish. Let's say you think EHEX is bullish, because I think EHEX has been doing quite well as of recently. As of last time I checked, which was a couple days ago, as of quite recently, UFO has more liquidity bonded to Pulse than EHEX does bonded to Pulse. So,
well, on top of that, we have more EHEX than any other token on all of Pulse Chain as well, besides Hex itself and Pulse Chain itself.
And that builds on top, right? Because I have no idea what's going to happen with EHEX, right? But it looks like the market decided it's worth was it like 100% more? Maybe it's down a bit now, like 60% more than like a few weeks ago, right? So people are buying up the price of it, and that probably contributes a little bit to pTGC as well, and like how the system's designed with like the arbitrage bots and like Hart's law, right? So yeah, like having everything all together, the liquidity, like pay attention, guys, if you're in meme coins or not meme coins on Pulse Chain, pretty much any token for that matter, but pay attention to how much liquidity there is there, because if you make $1 million, but there's 50 grand of liquidity, you didn't make $1 million, right? You maybe made 30, maybe 40 grand or something, right? You didn't make $1 million. So the point is,
the other bad thing about that is the only way you get that 30 grand is by selling on all the peers that you got into that project.
Yeah, and you'll smash the price down minus 99%. So
yeah, and you just screwed over pretty much all your friends that you got into the project behind you. It's a cutthroat world.
Yeah, and you guys can do some of the math and stuff with the pools. Like you don't have to, but you can find out, like, let's say Pulse Chain was to go to SAC price, or Pulse Chain was to go to 10x the SAC price. You could figure out how much that liquidity would be worth, and I'm pretty sure, like, if Pulse Chain does like anything significant, right, and you have all these tightly connected through liquidity, like, call them meme coin, not meme coins, altcoins on Pulse Chain, those are gonna get carried up. The LP values are gonna get carried up, and I think pTGC and UFO as of right now are some of the most liquid PRCs, excluding a couple coins, but I think pTGC and UFO they're at least top 3. in terms of some of the most liquid PRCs on Pulse Chain, and that's what I'm paying attention to, because when you're looking at something really, like I was kind of describing before, like what I kind of call it the intrinsic value, but I don't know if that's the maybe not the proper right terminology for that, but the liquidity is what's important, right? Like that's what people are actually backing the value with. If it's not backed by any liquidity, it's not really. I don't think it's any good, to be honest with you. So, yeah, I appreciate what UFO is even doing, because it also incentivizes people to put their tokens in LP webs instead of, like, let's say, market selling them, right? So you have this. It sort of benefits kind of like, it's a net positive for people who want to enter and or people who want to exit, right? And like TG was saying before, with like some of the coins that have gone down, and you have people that are maybe holding at a minus 70% loss, they're going to be your resistance on the way up. Like those are going to be your baggage. Like you're going to have crybabies and stuff. If you have something that is at all-time highs, like you don't have people that are depressed, you don't have resistance. It's pretty much price discovery at that point, right? It's up to the market to see how much people will buy it up before, I guess, somebody comes in and sells the price down. So yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see how much those webs are worth by the time Pulse Chain goes into its massive bull market. And I wonder how that ratio is going to flip as well with pTGC and WPLS, because you were saying it's like 3-1 right now. So you would need, for what, like one pTGC, you get 3 Pulse. So I wonder how high that could go. But like, I don't know, even the website has some good models on the deflation and stuff, which I thought was super interesting. Looking at like some of the models for like the future burn supply and stuff, because it's quite a significant amount. Like it's not nothing, you know what I mean? So, and not many tokens have that, and it's not a necessity, but it acts like an accelerator, right? Like if you have these things on top of something that's already great and something that already has a good narrative that people are actually buying into, then it's gonna help you. It's gonna act like a little bit of leverage, right? So I guess that's some of my thoughts on it.
Yeah, definitely. I think the buy and burn is a really, really underrated feature. It's an investor that's never going to sell on you. With Hex, that's the God whale pretty much. There's someone buying it up and just wasn't selling. I look at the buy and burn like that. It happens within the code, and the DAO does it. UFO is now doing it. When volume increases, it just increases the machine. I was even like talking back and forth with a few hexagons on Twitter about how pTGC has even turned into a huge purchaser of all the RH tickers due to the volume increasing recently. Since the DAO is able to add LP on a more regular basis with the volume increasing, it's turning into a 100 mil purchase or 100 mil PLS purchase of all these RH stickers on like an everyday thing now. If it's Hex, if it's PLSX, and if you think about it, this is still at ground level of the RH ecosystem. Like, let's say this thing turns up to $2 million of volume a day within our web. Well, then that would be ultimately 100K in value earned by the machine. So if you consider pTGC a business, the business would, in profits, get $100,000 a day. $40,000 of that would be the DAO. Well, then that DAO would be doing buy and burns of pTGC or LP ads with RH stickers, $40,000 a day. So that's a $20,000 purchase of RH tickers. I don't know what level what price RH tickers would be at that point. But a lot of this LP is getting burned. So what does that mean? That means those RH tickers are bought and then sent into the debt address to never be sold again unless they get purchased out of there. And if they get purchased out of there, that's a net positive for the RH ecosystem. So yeah, they could get sold back into the pool, but they could never get sold twice. And that's what's important. So we put in a purchase of an RH ticker that will never get sold by our ecosystem. It's now to the debt address. So then as far as then pTGC becomes this RH ticker benevolent whale, this pTGC benevolent whale, this UFO benevolent whale. It just starts gathering up all this value and ultimately helps itself while helping the whole entire ecosystem.
I wanted to ask you a question about the yield. It might be a little bit more technical, and I'll get into like a discussion with, because I was thinking about how the yield might work out with pTGC going into the future and stuff. Just kind of thinking about some of the game theory in my head. But what I wanted to ask you is, when, let's say there's like a transfer, for example, and you have that tax, is the tax automatically distributed as soon as that like tax is collected and then automatically redistributed to its given allocations, or is it like pooled for the day and then distributed, or how exactly does the distribution phase with like the yield versus going to the DAO versus whatever else with pTGC like work exactly? Would you if you know?
The reflections happen automatically, and this is both with UFO and pTGC. So you get the reflections, or I need to check on UFO, but I know this for pTGC. You get the reflections automatically. So any of the holders will just get those reflections on every single transaction, but everything else gets stored. And then when it hits a threshold, it gets converted to its location. And they do that just mainly for gas purposes, so they don't have to pay the gas fee on every single transaction to do the funds to the DAO, because they would have to switch the money from pTGC to PLS for the DAO, or the pTGC sent to every staker. It just gets put into that one contract, and then the users claim out of that contract, etc. So it doesn't happen every single transaction besides the reflections. And the other ones, it's a threshold it has to hit.
I see. So yeah, it's a little bit of both then. The yield, sounds like the yield comes out right away, and like you're saying, the reflections will build a threshold and then get sent out. I think so what you're saying, so yeah, as soon as that volume happens, then you'll get paid out essentially.
Yeah, the thresholds aren't high at all. Like they get kicked out pretty quick. It's just it can't really do all those things on all these mini transactions, because you have to realize like a lot are just like arbitrage bot transactions for $2, $1, 50 cents. So on those ones, it's more just grabbing it, and then when larger transactions go through, it kind of hits the thresholds, and then it starts ticking out the mechanics.
And then another kind of question with the yield and stuff. So I assume it works like, let's say there's 10,000, or let's say there's 1 million pTGC in yield given out, like in total, like that's like for the whole day, all the volume. Just as an example, there's like 1 million pTGC to be distributed.
Okay.
Let me think about like how exactly I'll ask this, but so yeah, is the yield it's given out proportionally kind of evenly to every pTGC, let's say. So like if the total supply is, let's say it's, I can't quite remember what it is off the top of my head, but let's say it's 6 billion. I don't know if it is 6 billion. But let's say it is 6 billion, and there's 1 million pTGC going to be yielded for the day. Does that 1 million get just automatically redistributed evenly across? And I'm probably oversimplifying it, but is that kind of generally how it works?
Evenly based on how much of the pTGC you have in your wallet. So you kind of look at everyone's wallet as a percentage. So if this wallet owns 1% of the supply, if this one owns 0.001% of the supply, so there's the pool of all the pTGC that's about to get distributed, and based on how much pTGC you own, you get that percentage of that distribution, right?
All right. So, and I don't know if I'm understanding correctly, and maybe I'm misunderstanding, but it sounds like everyone's yield per individual pTGC unit should be the exact same. But if somebody has 10 million pTGC units, since they're getting they have more, they'll get more pTGCs because they have more in the first place relative to someone, of course, who has less, right? But I guess the question is, the payout per pTGC should be equal across all the pTGCs, right?
Correct. There's no amplifier for anyone in particular. It's just based on how much of the pot you own, the percentage of the shares. UFO shares is a little bit different, or UFO's LPs are a little bit different because it's based on UFO shares, not the UFO in your PLPs. So that's what's really unique about UFO is it's all based on the UFO shares. And I was actually going to bring this up to Banana because I know he's been doing a lot of calculations on his UFO LPing. Banana, if you're still listening.
Yep.
I know Banana locked in his UFO shares probably within the first couple of days because he's been in this ecosystem. So the amount of APY Banana could be receiving from LPing is different than someone who went in now. Because you locked in a UFO share rate day 2. Does that make sense? Banana?
Yep, I am. I'm here. I'm listening. And yes, I did. I locked my UFO shares. It was probably 9 days after the launch of UFO.
Yeah. So you can look at what your UFO share rate is, and you can actually look at how many UFOs you have in that LP pool.
Yep.
So if someone came in today and put the same amount of value into that LP pool that you have in LP, he would not lock in the same share rate that you locked in on day 9, because you locked it in at a lower price and it doesn't get in permanent loss like the PLP tokens do. You locked in your UFO share rate, and what that does is that incentivizes you to keep LPing, because if you ever close your LP, you're going to lose your share rate.
Right.
So that going said, pTGC doesn't work this way. There's no amplification for being early. There's no amplification for quantities. It's just based on percentage of the pool that you own. You get the percentage of the rewards. That's how all reflections really work.
So I kind of had this thought, especially with like the deflating supply and stuff. To me it kind of seems like it's almost like I don't know if it's compounding squared. Maybe I'll have to think about it a bit more, but it sounds like you not only have compounding from as you're earning rewards, like your stack gets bigger, so now you own like a bigger pool or a bigger slice of the pie, right? So it compounds in that sense. But what it also sounds like with the supply decreases, and so let's say the supply decreases however much, but the price and the volume stays the same. It sounds like since there's less pTGC needing to be paid out in circulation, that each pTGC that you have in your wallet will start yielding more than like, let's say 6 months ago. So let's say today the yield is like 0.00001 pTGC per pTGC. I think in the future that number will start to increase. So the amount of pTGCs you'll get paid out for the amount of pTGCs you have in your wallet will start to increase. And not only that, you'll have the actual compounding reflections in your wallet. So it's like, I don't know if I'm explaining that very well, but it's like compounding squared.
The debt address is excluded from getting reflections, and it can't get staking rewards because the debt address can't stake. You know, it's a human interaction that has to stake it. So 100%, if the debt address keeps, and this is kind of what we're saying, is it creates this loop. So mathematically, and we always go back, mathematically, if tokens keep getting shoved over to that burn address, you now have less people to share, or less tokens to share with. So technically, yes, you're going to get more reflections. And then in turn, but then there's a decreasing supply constantly. So in turn, what's that do? That just keeps pushing the price upwards.
Kind of like my thought kind of is that I wanted to think about what the yield might be in the future, but you might need to put even more like exponential sort of models built on top of that because of like what you're describing with the feedback loops and stuff, especially when you have UFO even deleting more supply. You're gonna start to see that payout per pTGC increase even faster, plus your bag size increasing even faster. So I think it's going to be crazy, man. Like it
might not be quantity of tokens increasing, but dollar value increasing, right? Because the value that you're getting in reflections is based on the value of volume, and volume is always calculated in dollar form, right? So then in turns, the reflections you're receiving are in dollar form as well. So if there's $100,000 in volume and 1% of that, because 1% of all transactions is going to reflections, let's just not even think about staking right now, the rewards from staking, but let's just say reflections. So 1% of $100,000 in volume is $1,000. So there's going to be $1,000 divided up amongst all the holders. But if price keeps going up, everyone tomorrow is going to receive less, or let's say 6 months from now, they're going to technically receive less tokens for the same amount of volume, but they're going to receive more dollar, or they won't actually receive any more dollar value because it's all volume based. So they're still receiving $1,000 today. In 6 months from now, if there's $100,000 of volume, they're going to receive $1,000 tomorrow. Or not technically, because they're going to have more portion of the supply. So that being said, they get more because they have more portion of the supply. But let's say they had the same exact percentage of the pool that they have to share with. But you're right, there's no way if they just held, their supply would just keep increasing. So they'll have more percentage of the pie, especially because the pie keeps getting shoved over to the debt address as well, and the debt address is excluded from fees and so on and so forth. But what this in turn equals is price goes up, and technically they're receiving less tokens, but it'll be more dollar value.
I see. So yeah, like if pTGC does a 10x and you're getting paid the same $1,000, you're going to have like 10 times less units.
Exactly. But then all the units you received in the early days is now up 10x.
So that is an interesting sort of effect as well, right?
Yeah, it's all the units are like based on, what you're receiving that day. So like even right now, let's say we ran up 10x and then we retraced back down 10x. Well, those units that you received up at the top, if the volume was the same, you technically receive 10x less units up there. But then when you came back down here, you started earning the same amount of units again. So obviously dipped whatever that is, 90%. Your units dip 90% too, but you also get all those X's on the way back up. So everything that you're earning down at these levels, once we move 10x from here, you're going to make a 10x on all those units as well.
I like that kind of comparison as well, because even let's say price goes down, right? Like the reverse will happen. So like if price goes up, you'll start to make less units, even though it's the same dollar. If price goes down, you'll start to make more units, right, off of the same dollar's worth of volume.
But it's hard to as price goes up, volume increases, especially because we make money off of our liquidity pools. So obviously when price goes up, since all of our liquidity is burned and locked, it's not like we have the problem of people pooling liquidity as price goes up. Usually that's just what happens with other tokens is people add liquidity in the early days, and as it rises, they just kind of slowly start pooling their liquidity. So once you get at the top, it's not as much liquidity as you actually thought, because the people who were providing liquidity hit their numbers. Everyone has a number, but that's what's beautiful about the debt address is it doesn't have a number. It's just there forever. So as we keep chugging upwards, let's say a 10x from here, and it depends if it's a 10x on the token or a 10x on the token you're tied to. So if you do a 10x because, let's say, PLS did a 10x, your LP pool actually 10x's. But if you do a 10x because you actually went up 10x against the blockchain, your LP pool doesn't 10x it. Like, I've done the math before. I forget it now, but it's more like half of that. So it's not the same growth as far as liquidity goes. I don't know if that made sense to you. So if you do a 10x because what you connected to dragged you up 10x, your LP pool actually does a 10x as well. But if you do a 10x against the token you're tied to, your LP pool does like a 4 or 5x. I think that was the math I calculated. So it's actually better for liquidity if the thing you're attached to performs the 10x and just drags you up with it, than you just outperforming the thing you're tied to. What was I getting at though? God, I lost my train of thought. Sorry.
And I think RH has said it as well with LP bonding. Kind of typically what you'll see is some of the bigger assets with more liquidity, even if it's in other pairs, those will kind of be the ones that like help drag pTGC up or down the most, right? Where like if you have, like, for example, if I create a token and then I go bond it with $30 of pTGC, like it'll contribute a little bit, but it's not going to contribute as much as if I have like the L1 WPLS and put $1 million in there, right? That's going to contribute a lot more to the Hart's law, right? And I think even some of the R bots and stuff, like they're looking for value as well. Like they're not working for free, so to speak.
Yeah. Well, it's really dependent. So like if you created a token and you held all the supply and you paired it with pTGC only, like that was your only pair, you never even let anyone buy it, or let's say no one bought it, technically wherever pTGC went, your token would go. It wouldn't matter. If let's say you made the pairing 1-to-1 and you called it the Kong token. Well, if pTGC went up to $100, Kong token would be $100. It wouldn't matter because everything in LP is just ratio based. So if you made that ratio 1-to-1 and there was no buyers and sellers, you didn't create any other liquidity pools, they just move up and down together forever because everything in V2 liquidity is just ratios. But the thing is usually there's other ratios and different size liquidity pools and obviously buyers and sellers. So then when you factor all those things in, that's what kind of makes the mess of things. But 100%, it's, the dog can't wag, or the dog wags the tail don't wag the dog. So like when we are moving up, we don't actually move up Pulse Chain that much because our liquidity is like nothing compared to Pulse Chain's liquidity. So all the other things that Pulse Chain's connected to actually takes away from the gains that we're trying to give Pulse Chain, because it just has to spread it out amongst the thousands of pairs it has. But then when you look at us as small, if Pulse Chain goes on a run, well, that's like 20% of our liquidity. That's not even to mention it would drag up everything with it. So let's say when PDI goes on a run, that's an easier one to say. When PDI goes on a run, since we have a huge pairing with PDI, it goes on a run and it drags us up. But then the arbitrage bots have to go fix all our other pairs. So since let's say PDI is only 20% of our liquidity, well, that means if PDI runs up, let's say 100%, we're only going to get like 20% of that, because the other 80% has to go and fix all the other liquidity and bring those other ones up 20% to level out the liquidity pools, because they need to make pTGC the same price within all the pairs. And that's how the arbitrage bots make money. And that's what market makers are designed to do, is make the market even out the pairs. So that's why the biggest liquidity pool usually prevails, because that's the one you're mostly tied to. So that's where most of the money has to always flow to.
I can tell you've studied you've studied. So yeah, that's what's nice to see in a token founder. So I think that's another thing that probably resonated with some people with Richard Hart and stuff, was because like he had a point. Like there's tons of scammers, there's tons of people who will try and send you through the meat grinder. And I think Richard was giving away all the alpha for free, right? Just on his streams. Like if you wanted to watch, if you had like the ears to listen, then you could like soak up all the knowledge for free. Whereas like the other guys they're gatekeeping, sending you into the meat grinder. So yeah, I appreciate, and you guys should appreciate like well-versed token founders and stuff. So
yeah, pretty much everything I know is just based on being a student of RH and studying everything he said. I pick apart every word that guy says. I try to even rewatch the videos and see if I can pick up on more stuff as my knowledge grows. And I actually find myself going back and I miss certain things that I couldn't pick up on previously a couple years ago, because just my knowledge wasn't there yet. So I couldn't comprehend what he was talking about, and now I can actually comprehend a lot more going back to a lot of the ideas he talks about. He's just spot on with so much stuff. That's a huge reason why I built on Pulse Chain, is because I believe he's a lot more educated than people tend to give him credit for, and he's pretty much in the top echelon of understanding how tokens work and how to pump tokens and how these liquidity webs work. Like he's pretty much one of the first people to talk about Hart's Law. And personally, I believe I'm one of the first people to talk about the X multiplier theory. I haven't heard of anyone else say, oh yeah, that guy's brought that up. But I think I'm pretty close to one of the first people to really put that stuff together as far as how B2 liquidity works.
Even with I remember watching some of Richard's streams, like if you guys remember him talking about unisocks and stuff, where he was describing Hart's Law. That's a good explanation. I think it takes a little bit of a prerequisite technical understanding. But as I understand, like I think Richard was coming up with these things. Like I don't think there was a source on why the AMMs were acting like that, right? Until he came to that, like he saw that. I think he came to that conclusion because of unisocks. So I don't know. It's like he calls himself a thought leader, but I think it's actually true, right? And he says he popularized Uniswap, which is probably true as well. He always brags about how much volume Hex did on Uniswap, pretty much almost majority of the volume for a long period of time. It's there. So yeah, I think Pulse Chain is where you want to be building. And like TG was saying, like having this Grace currency on an L1 like Pulse Chain, right? I think I mean, you heard some of the people say it's gonna flip Solana, which I wouldn't be surprised, right? Like Hex was it was a top 3 cryptocurrency at one point, right? And Richard said it like he wants Pulse, Hex, and Pulse X in the top 3 spots. So, Prayer, you got anything, man?
Yeah, but it would be on a different topic. Still on pTGC and Pulse, but what I was going to
probably all good.
Yeah, I was going to say that. Well, I'll just ask you guys, what do you think pTGC will do when Pulse does a 4x? Because I think this next run up where it does, I know I'm going to be watching, because we have a history. When Pulse ran up 4x last time, pTGC did a 42x. So when that happens again, I'm excited to see what the results are going to be. What do you guys think pTGC will do?
More than PLS, but no crystal ball. No, I don't know if, I think there's probably a way you could calculate it just based off of like if you said, like if you gave it the logic and if you gave it some metrics and you said here are some previous data of what's happened, like you could probably come to like a pretty good conclusion. But yeah, off the top of my head, I wouldn't know, but I would expect probably at least a 2x. I also wonder if there will be kind of like with some tokens, like a diminishing return over time. Could see something like that happening with anything. Right?
Well, it's gonna get harder to keep doing X's against the blockchain as we get bigger. That's usually what happens.
Oh, okay.
You can also have more people to spread the word. So you can't just look at it linearly. A lot of it just has to do with market adoption and stuff like that. But obviously, the more people you get in, the more people you have telling other people. So it could actually grow really fast. That's why, like, even RH itself says Hex is actually really small still. Like this, look at the holder count. That's pretty micro. It just kind of depends on what's big to you. Like, I still think we're micro. I know 2 months ago, I was telling people, because I was talking about the X multiplier theory, and I was talking about how it's really easy for pTGC to do 100x. All we need is a 10x of Pulse Chain and a 10x of pTGC against Pulse Chain. Last time Pulse Chain ran up 4x, we ran up 10x against Pulse Chain, which equaled a 40x for pTGC. I was predicting something like, and this is just a prediction, I thought it was a good prediction, I thought it was a good goal. A 10x against Pulse Chain and a 10x of Pulse Chain in the near future could equal 100x for pTGC holders. But that being said, pTGC has already done a 5x and Pulse Chain's done nothing. This is just in 2 months.
Right.
So I might have been selling pTGC short, because for us to hit our goal now, we just need a 2x to our 5x.
Huh.
So I could have been selling ourselves short, because I was looking at it, okay, we're heavier now. Last time Pulse did a 4x, we did a 10x. I'm now saying this time if Pulse does a 10x, I still think we're doing this 10x just because we have a little bit more to lift now. We're getting heavier, our liquidity's getting bigger, etc. But I could have been straight wrong. We're getting more adoption right now. Now we just moved a 5x without Pulse even moving up 20%. Or it's moved up 20%, but you get my point.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the adoption has been bananas. I've seen so many new people in the chat in the last few weeks. It's very exciting. And to me, I think when we do the next run up, when Pulse does a run up of a 4x, and that's not what I'm going to be focusing in on. It wouldn't surprise me if if pTGC does very well because of the adoption that we've seen, and people talk, and you get excited when your bag is inflating. You're going to be talking to your buddies, and they naturally will become curious and perhaps participate also in the ecosystem. So I wouldn't be surprised to see us do, like Kong was saying, well, somewhere between a 4x and a 42x.
Another thing as well, Pulse Chains, it only has about, let's say, like 8 to 10,000 daily active users on average for the past couple of months. Like I would say, it's been like this probably since June, like in this like 10K to 8K sort of region. But imagine, and I'll bring up another perspective as well. It took Ethereum over 600 days to go from 10,000 daily active users to 100,000 daily active users. So, and that's data from Etherscan. So all I'm saying is like, I don't think Pulse Chain is going to gain massive adoption overnight because that didn't happen with Ethereum. But if it happens to be somewhat similar, like probably if you're looking at the same time frame, like 600 days in, and this was around when Hex had its all-time high. I think it was like 600 and something days to its all-time high. So I think that's what I'm looking for with Pulse. It could actually, I think it could get more than 100,000 users in that time frame. We've done it, like Hex had more. I don't know about daily active users, but Hex definitely had more than 100,000 people. Like definitely had a few 100,000 people kind of in and out of there. Even the Pulse Chain Telegrams, like last time I was looking at like 40, 50,000 people, maybe 60,000. But I'm gonna be paying attention to the adoption, right? And like I said, Ethereum, this stuff, people just didn't start using it overnight. It took some time, and having things that are pumping right now is nice. Kind of, I think it might bring even a little bit of attention to the chain because there's not very many projects that at least I have that I'm sort of looking at that are moving right now, especially to new all-time highs, right? Like I don't know anything else besides like the few select tickers on Pulse Chain that are like UFO, pTGC, X token that have gone to like pretty much all-time highs in this depression zone. But yeah, I guess the point is maybe another year, and I would like to see, like, we'll probably get to 50,000 daily active users sooner rather than later. And when that happens, like I've shared some of the adoption on my Twitter recently with pTGC. It's gained like around 500 holders in the past week off of 9,000 daily active users. So imagine if this is 90,000 daily active users, right? Are we going to get 5,000 holders adoption every single day? Or not every single day, but in a week time frame? Because that would be interesting. Like I think pTGC only has about just over 7,000 holders. So seeing that sort of adoption happen in a day, like what do you think will happen to the price? And if you don't know the answer, like it'll probably go up, and it'll probably have like been going up for a while. So yeah, I think like it's gonna take time to, like, even Pulse Chain's gonna take a bit of time to mature. I think like pTGC's been around for a while. I don't like degen. Sometimes I participate in some of that stuff, but what I like is I think you could probably call pTGC like it's been around for a while, right? Like it's not like I'm sniping a new meme token. So having something like that, and the chart speaks for itself, right? Like nobody knows the future, nobody has a crystal ball, but I mean, we talked about a lot of good points today with the yield, the buy and burns, the deflation, positive feedback loops, UFO accelerating, potentially even more, like buying and burning and price appreciation. So we'll see what happens, but it's looking good all the way down here. I don't know. Like, I think maybe it's a bad argument. I think it's a bit logical to say, like, if it's looking good down here, if it's hitting all-time highs down here, like, wouldn't you expect like this times 10, like euphoria times 10, like when you have like 10 times as many people or even 5 times as many people daily actively using the blockchain? So just like some thoughts to keep in mind, like you're having this now with less than 10,000 daily active users. Like imagine once Pulse Chain starts to really ramp up and the volume starts to all across the chain starts to like become like hundreds of millions every single day, because I think it has in the past. So.
Yeah, I think another important note is usually when people go to a new blockchain, they're not necessarily only going there just for the gas ticker. They're also going there to speculate on a certain token as well. I believe the gas token is going to do a lot of X's, so that will probably attract a lot of certain people to Pulse Chain alone. But I foresee a lot of the money flowing into the alts as well. And personally, I think pTGC is just really showing its strength in being one of the top alts on Pulse Chain, which will naturally collect some of that value, right? You know, if you just kind of look at the Pulse Chain ecosystem and looked at the top alts and you're like, okay, well, people will land on Pulse Chain and a portion of their money will flow to the blue chip alts, if you want to call them. Personally, I like to consider pTGC and UFO in that category. So I think we're going to collect some of that value along with other great projects built here on Pulse Chain as well, but 100%. And then obviously we get the gains from them landing on Pulse Chain, because anywhere Pulse Chain goes, we get dragged up just due to ratios and how V2 liquidity works. And then if we can get any of that money to flow into our tiny cup, because we are tiny in comparison to Pulse Chain, it just makes us do tons of X's over the blockchain. So, which then attracts more people, right? And that's what we want.
And who knows what happens with the narrative on Pulse Chain? Like I've kind of always said, like, unless you're an expert genius with a crystal ball, chances are you're not predicting the narrative that really gives you that like euphoric run. Maybe you get it lucky, but like if you think back to Hex and stuff, like if you were there like early days and saying like, yeah, I think Richard's gonna release an L1 and he's gonna do also a DEX, he's gonna do sacrifices for both projects, and he's gonna use the Hex token, and people are gonna buy the Hex token and send it to the sacrifice ad. Like nobody, I don't know if you'd be able to predict that, and it'd probably sound kind of crazy. But that was one of the narratives, right? That was one of the, like, the last big pushes, some of the things that happened. So
yes,
all I'm saying
is that's what brought it from the 1 penny mark to the 50 cent mark, was just the fact that everyone was buying Hex and then sacrificing it, right? Because they were helping their Hex at the same time while helping their sacrifice bags.
And nobody's like, maybe you are, but I think it's extremely difficult to predict what the narrative is going to be, and it's probably not going to be something that's like here now. It's probably because I think when Hex came out, the narrative was blockchain CD, but like TG was saying, like, is that what pumped it from 1 cent to 50 cent because everyone believed it was the best blockchain CD? Maybe some of the people did, maybe some of the people didn't, but we saw it with Pulse Chain. Like the Telegram has more members than Hex. Like more people kind of understood. They saw the value in PLS. So yeah, I think we'll see what the narrative happens to be with Pulse Chain, but I think you guys will be surprised, but don't be surprised if you see a real good narrative come into play. Something that you never really expected, but like it happened to be. And I think the SEC will play a role. I've always kind of speculated that like maybe it was like maybe it's bad at first, but like it gives us that like strength in the future, right? So we'll see. But I think maybe the SEC seems bad right now, but I speculate that there could be a good result that comes out of that helps Pulse Chain and Hex and the whole like Richard Hart ethos. So that's just some of my thoughts on it. But we'll see what happens. Like, who knows? Especially when Richard comes out, if he ever does and starts streaming again. I think you'll probably see the Hex price go up quite significantly that day.
Yeah, he could pop on the stream and just say hi to people, and that thing would pop up 5x.
Yeah. On another note as well, like he always does the Christmas videos. If you guys, I think he did it 2023, did it 2022 if I remember correctly. But he usually does a stream or a video around or even on Christmas, right? So I'd like to see if something like that happens. Like, we'll see. I assume we might get something like that from him, but like that'd be pretty cool. And we always kind of see like in the new year and stuff. This is kind of getting a little bit sidetracked, but kind of still on topic. But yeah, we usually see like things kind of like they kind of get washed out a little bit towards the end of the year. And then Q1 comes around and it's like somebody flipped the switch on the market, and now all of a sudden everyone's taking out loans to buy crypto. So yeah.
Yeah, for me, it's hard to like hope and pray for certain events that aren't certain. Like you said, no one knows what the narrative's going to be. No one at all like can predict if this is going to come true, or if this is going to come true, and they're like hoping for this to happen. One thing I love about pTGC is you don't really have to hope for anything to happen. Like, mathematically, we know what it does every single day, and you can just bank on the code. And you shouldn't be banking on people doing certain things, banking on a video to come out, banking on these people to talk about this and this and this and this. Like, for me, I love the fact that pTGC is you're not banking on any of that. All you're pretty much doing is just letting the code do what the code does, and mathematically it keeps pushing the price up, and then that builds a community around that sentiment. And really, that's what crypto should be. It shouldn't be about a certain person. It shouldn't be about me. I really have nothing to do with it. I just love talking about crypto and educating people on the code itself of pTGC. But at the end of the day, I'm just a community member, and I love to educate people, but the code's the code. And that's what I find so cool about pTGC is it's not a speculation of this is coming in the future, this person might do this. It's like, hey, mathematically, this is what's going to happen as time goes on.
It's a good point, right? And I've heard people say it. So, and it's a very good point. Like, you don't. I think crypto was invented to get Richard Hart said it. Crypto was invented to get rid of middlemen. So, like, don't invent a crypto, or don't try not to be. And I'm not telling anyone what to do, but try not to be in cryptos where there is a middleman, right? And that's why, I think that's also why Richard hated like admin keys and stuff, because it has that centralization backing it. So, yeah, but I think the people in this space, like, I think it's like what Richard says, like, we will win. And like with pTGC, like, you don't have to bank on variables, right? You have the code, and it works, right? So.
And the thing is if those variables come out, it just pushes us even harder up. So you win either way, right? Like,
it's like the best of both worlds, right?
You get both worlds. Yeah, if RH pumps his chain, or if mass adoption comes, that just multiplies our gains. Like, literally, that's how LP pools work. So we get to do all these X's due to the math. And if some positive sentiment comes from Pulse Chain, which I believe it is, it times that by our sentiment. Or if Pulse Chain's or PDI's narrative is true, okay, we get all those gains as well. You literally get to get all these speculative ideas mixed in with a multiplier of literally math and code, and then you get to run into the bull run with that. I just don't see personally why not to take advantage of that. And this is another point, is since we're buying so much of the RH tickers and LPing them and getting so big with them, like UFO has literally like $3 million tied with them. Even the people who don't care about the altcoins on Pulse Chain, like literally only RH tickers, they actually have to pump our bags with their bags, even if they don't want to talk about us. So even if they don't even want to give an acknowledgement to the code or other builders on top of this blockchain, it's only RH only. But they don't actually realize that in turn, if they bring all their tickers up 10x, they also have to bring our tickers up 10x with them because of tied liquidity bonding. So there's just, like you said, how many hexagon and pulsicons are there? 100,000? Well, there's technically 100,000 advocates for pTGC. They just don't even know it.
I think that's a very good point, right? Like, kind of like whether you like it or not, like pTGC is there and it's doing well, right? Like and it has, like, I think it's developing a track record. So we'll see. Like, I think eventually, I don't know. We've seen some big names come in and talk about it as well. Like, I think K4K, he's posted a couple of videos, which is cool, right? So I think, yeah, it seems like maybe some community members are seeing the light a little bit. But I think eventually people will come around. And like you're saying, TG, like whether or not they do, like if Pulse Chain does extremely well, pTGC it'll do extremely well based off the Hart's Law. So
Exactly. So it's just a scenario where everyone wins. We want them to win.
Mm-hmm.
it's a home run.
We win. And then everyone wins. And that'd be awesome.
What a concept. What a concept.
What's up, Coach? How are you?
What's up, dude? Doing well. Today's good. Tomorrow is the little one's birthday, so got an alien getting a little bigger, a little stronger, a little wiser.
I hope it's an alien-themed birthday.
Well, he's got a Sonic onesie on right now, so Sonic's an alien, right?
I don't think so. I think you're grasping for straws now, or whatever the saying is.
Mm-hmm.
I think Sonic's a hedgehog.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. My oldest son was just like that. He was like, Sonic's a hedgehog, but he did come from another planet, technically.
It's a hedgehog alien.
Technically, he came from another planet. Just saying. I've watched these videos many, many times, guys.
So what else? Like prayer, you got some.
Do I have something? I usually have some notes in front of me. Let's see, let me pick one.
Yeah, I don't want to put you on the spot, but
No, I think we can talk about one and then shut it down. It's been an hour and a half. We usually try to end it at about the top of the hour. But I wanted to talk about like how locking benefits the ecosystem. I know when we lock our tokens, we're not going to touch them unless we emergency end stake, which has a benefit of sending the 30% to the other lockers. But how else does locking benefit the ecosystem? I mean, are there some things that I'm missing? I mean, not lock tokens aren't going to be sold, and that's a benefit.
I think also morally there's like the delayed gratification aspect of it as well. Like if you're willing if you're willing to lock, you can reap the rewards of your own actions a little bit. But I don't know. I think that's a bit more like, I think that's like philosophical rather than like a technical answer. But yeah, like you were saying, I think it takes sell pressure away. It also incentivizes people to stay locked until they earn like over the 1% yield. So like they can cover the fees or whatnot. So again, like helps kind of incentivize people to hodl, right? Which is one of Richard's ideals, is like, don't sell the bottom of your 10,000x bag.
Yeah.
And then, or like, don't sell Bitcoin on a 2x when it's $30, right? I think that might be a, like, in terms of like a user perspective, like just Richard said it, and it's not for everyone, but just protecting yourself from yourself, right? Giving you that opportunity that, like, whenever your unlock happens, like if Pulse Chain's extremely successful, like if it's even half of what Ethereum has done, where do you think pTGC will be, right? And if it like maintains that track record versus PLS, like maybe you saved yourself from yourself, right? Not selling on a 2x.
Yeah.
But again, it's not for everyone. So
yeah. I like to think that I don't need to save myself from myself by locking my tokens, but I have locked tokens. And there's another benefit, which is the different tiers other than the 10-year. The 10-year locks receive all of, 100% of the locking rewards, if you want to put it that way, the locking penalties for the emergency unlocker. They receive 100%. But all the other tiers, when they unlock, a portion of their pTGC gets sent to the burn address, as much as 45% in the 90-day locking tier, which is, I'm guessing, when we were talking about this earlier today, Kong, pulling data off I don't know where you get it off the blockchain. And I'm really curious to see how many people are locking in 45 or 90-day locks, and then 1-year locks and on up. But those 90-day locks are burning, 45% of the pTGC. And I'm guessing that most people are doing the 90-day locks. It's like the safest one, in my opinion. You just don't get as much pTGC at the end of your lock. However, you're benefiting the ecosystem because you're burning 45% of the pTGC, which not only benefits the ecosystem, but it flows back to the person with the lock also. The benefit does.
Yeah, I think locking, is really, in a certain word, just as important as holding, right? The only way price goes up is by a lot of people holding. If everyone just keeps selling, then price literally just keeps hitting that wall of people selling. So locking is just a form of helping people and incentivizing them to hold longer. And that's really what RH is known for, is monetizing that, is monetizing long-term holding with paying them in inflation. And the interesting thing about that inflation is really it's almost like a transfer of wealth from the people who are willing to lock their tokens or hodl longer or hold longer. They get the inflation, which ultimately, if they're getting the inflation and the people who aren't holding long-term or not willing to say they're going to hold long-term don't get the inflation, then it's the same thing that's kind of happening with stakers with us. They continue to get more rewards while someone who is just holding or not even holding the token at all is not getting any of these rewards at all. So you're rewarding people to hold your token. And why is it good to reward people to hold their token? This is one thing I studied with Hex very in depth, is you want to reward people for holding your token long term, because your token will never do crazy numbers if you cannot incentivize people to hold, right? If there's no reason to hold, why would you even hold the token after you did 100x? There's no reason to. Anyone in finance knows you don't just hold your money, you put your money to work for you, so you don't need to work for money. So you want to build into the system a reason to hold, and that's usually a form of reflections or rewards, or in RH's case, he figured out the way to have people lock up their tokens and earn that APY, which incentivized them to hold long term. That's what I find interesting with locking, is it puts a buffer between you, but in my opinion, the most important thing isn't necessarily the locking portion. It's the idea of a community coming together and holding long term, not only for the success of your own personal portfolio, but the success of your whole community around you as well. Because when you sell, you're getting profits, but you sold on other people in the protocol, which ultimately isn't a good thing. And that's why I think what's so interesting about pTGC is it incentivizes you to hold long term with reflections and rewards. So you can actually purchase your tokens and hold them, and the contract continues to pay you in a trustless way. And if you continue to hold this project up with the rest of your community, the only thing that can happen is price keeps increasing and increasing and increasing. And it can actually get to a point where if you keep increasing the price and increasing liquidity and increasing the volume, it makes it to the reflections and the rewards are actually worth never selling your principal. Because if you have a trustless system that keeps going up in value over a span, like obviously there's always going to be ups and downs, but if you have a trustless system that always continues to go up in value, there actually is no reason to ever sell your principal, because you can just live off of the principal. And this is with most investing in general, but most investing like outside of crypto, you only get the APY. You're actually not making any X's. But here with crypto, you get that 10% APY, and then you get the X's. So then you get the X's for your portfolio, so you get the APY on those X's. For an example, if we're paying roughly 10% APY right now, you put in $10,000. Well, if you put in $10,000 in a normal 10% APY investment banking account, you're earning $1,000 a year. That's not anything you can live off of at all. Like, you need to save up your whole life to get that portfolio to a number that's actually livable. But with a system like this, you can find it early, believe in the system, and as a community, all hold the project up together, and you can actually make that project go from a $10,000 investment and easy. Like I said, we already figured out how we can easily do a 100x. It's just a 10x on Pulsion and 10x on pTGC. You can turn that $10,000 into $1 million, and now a 10% APY on $1 million is $100,000 a year. And now you created a scenario where everyone who is in that position actually doesn't need to hurt the price at all, because the APY you're getting paid out is actually backed by more PLS going into the LP pool to back that APR at all costs, making it so if you do decide to take profits out of APY, it doesn't create down pressure on the chart, because you put in pools to back that. And then if you have a system that constantly does that plus buy and burns, it keeps going up in price, and then your initial community members keep holding up the price, which then attracts new users, because it doesn't create a situation where price goes down. It just creates a new floor for new users to enter, which increases the price and keeps pushing it up, and could create a scenario that ultimately everyone's been looking for in crypto for the last however many years.
Well said.
So when Moon?
Yeah.
we already mooning, Kong. You already know it. Come on, dude.
We're not mooning yet. We're still a micro cap. That's what I think is so fun.
Then that's it. Like you said, we're not even moving yet because the blockchain hasn't even done the numbers. And let me just, as Zen is the humble individual. I'm the more crazy guy in this kind of like relationship between us two. But like, if you think about the consistency of pulse chain, and then you understand the Hart's law metric when it comes to the ratios of everything intertwined with pulse. So pulse X, ink, E hex, P hex, and anything that we have large liquidities with, you have to understand those numbers and those LPs that we've brought to the table from the DAO. And with PulseX and Ink and PHEX alone, I think we added about, give or take, $150,000 to $200,000. And just those three, or PulseX, Ink, and PHEX liquidity pools. We didn't have this the first run up we had. So essentially, when you actually think about it, with what Zen says about the X multipliers, you have to take into consideration of all the extra value of which is in those LP pools. And the things that I think about value, it's a little bit different than a lot of other people. Because I understand markets, I understand liquidity, I understand different kind of mechanisms into play. If Pulse does a 10x, hypothetically, not financial advice, Pulse does a 10x, what's Pulse X going to do? It's going to do a 10x. What is Ink going to do? It will do a 10x and maybe more. What is PHEX going to do? It's going to do a 10x. What is EHEX going to do? It's going to do roughly a 10x. Because it's not dictated from past performance, but you can look at past performance and then understand what could actually happen to the overall market conditions. So with that being stated, like this run up on pTGC alone, it might even surpass the run up that we essentially had the first time from January 8th to March 8th. At the height of Ethereum, the height of Pulse Chain, the height of PulseX, the height of everything, the height of pTGC. Now there's different magnitudes and measures that we actually put into play, and the liquidity web is that much greater and that much more, especially when it comes to the UFO factor coming into play. And other craziness, I'm not going to talk about them, but if you know, you know. With all those things helping out the ecosystem on a liquidity-based level, this, like the numbers that you actually understand and know if everybody understands what they hold and everybody just gets taught and educated, and that's why we do these spaces. The number is going to be a very, very stupid number that people just do not understand. So, especially like right now, like the only thing I see on my thread are just, all these scammers coming out. It's just like, pTGC, we've been out for 11 months. 11 months. And we have over 11% of the total supply burns. 90% of the liquidity is burnt or protocol owned. And if you understand what has happened in the last 2 weeks, you've had over 1 billion pulse chain right now. 1 billion. What is going to happen in the next run up? And I'm just going to put a little like cherry on top of the whipped cream that I'm presenting to everybody in here. When pulse chain starts running, understand that when we were going through that bear market time, pTGC was averaging a volume in all the LPs between about $20,000 to about $50,000. Now we're averaging between $100,000 and $250,000. So the size of the blockchain, let's just say Pulse Chain goes back to its all-time high, so that's 5x. Guess what else does? PulseX. Next thing. Inc. Next thing. PHEX goes up 5x. Next thing, EHEX is going to go 5x. It's not exactly the numbers. The ratios might change. But the relationship in terms of LP performance and the LP positions that's intertwined on Pulse Chain in general will basically do the same kind of ratios. And if you understand that statistic, understand how much more Pulse Chain is actually going to be coming into the DAO on a daily basis. So instead of $4,000 that is worth, actually it's not 4,000, it's about $3,600 with 100 million Pulse, and that's actually coming out on a daily basis here on pTGC. If it goes up 5x, so you just do 5 times 4, so that's about, we're basically going to be bringing into the DAO for anybody to vote on of like $20,000 a day. A day. And if you actually think about those numbers coming into play, $20,000 a day times 30, that's $600,000. $600,000 of Pulse of doing buy and burns to add more liquidity to maybe put into a treasury and for the next bear market that we have to go through. So just really understand those statistics going forward and really hone in on the liquidity factor that you get from other individuals. If you get the wrong liquidity, you might be wrecked. And the same kind of concept when it comes to like propaganda with the media, the propaganda with the educational systems, the propaganda with everything in life that we've been raised in. And just understand that crypto and pTGC and UFO, we've, with Zen and myself, taken the times of like on the phone every single day, like we're just like trying to figure out what are the flaws, what can we do better. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it's renounced, the LPs are burnt, and the community is very, very well educated.
Yeah.
So I'll land that plane right there. But understanding those things, right? Just what I just stated, like there is nothing, in my personal opinion, that can hone down to do anything better than what pTGC and UFO and honestly all the other amplifiers or anything that we essentially put Zen's name on or my name on with, because we understand crypto. That's the thing. I'll leave it at that. How do I do, Zen? See, our relationship is perfect, the humble, and then I just put the icing on the cake.
Zen, who was that guy that was just talking right now? I mean, dude, you should come in and talk like that for 10 minutes on every space.
Hey, I come in on my streams. I talk about, everybody knows. All my streams always, but I just put a little sauce, put a little personality. Keep the honey badger away, and then everything's good.
You're gonna have to clip that one and upload it to your YouTube.
I wrote it down.
I know, right?
I've been taking notes the whole time.
There you go.
Well, Hayden, go ahead.
But that's rough math, by the way, too. So, okay.
It's
Go
crypto,
ahead.
so it could pan out. It could not. You know, anything goes, man. Well, Zen, it's your show, technically.
Prairie Banana's been trying to get out of here for
Oh, shut up. No. Just kidding. All right.
No, we just.
No, I appreciate you going and explaining all that, Coach.
That was good.
That's the nice thing about the liquidity webs is we're growing our liquidity webs at the bottom of Pulse Chain. Every single X that these liquidity webs do, or these tokens we're providing liquidity with does, our webs get those X's as well. And, if today we have $100,000 with PLSX in liquidity, well, a 10X of PLSX makes that liquidity web technically $1 million. And that's what, in short terms, Coach was getting at. Coach just gave this super long, more theatrical version of that.
Theatrical.
We appreciate it. We know he's a theater kid, so thank you. But yeah, it just goes down to just the coach just doing the coach thing, and I think we all kind of know where we stand with what we think this can do in the future, and we all know where we stand, what we think Pulse Chain can do as a whole in this future. And I think we're in the right community. I think we're in the right place. I appreciate you guys all being here. I'll let Banana get to his family. I appreciate you being here, Banana.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure. I enjoy these streams. And
and Crypto Kong, I appreciate you showing up. I hope you start showing up a lot more.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, that was a good conversation.
Yeah, good talk. So
yeah.
And then Coach, thank you for showing up and blowing up.
I didn't blow up.
I meant it as a good way. A good way.
Yeah.
A good blow up. All right. I'll take it. I'll take it and run with it.
That was meant to be a compliment if you didn't take it that way.
Coach, are you going I'll save myself a message to you tomorrow. Are you going to use the spinning logo on your stream tomorrow? I think I sent you the file.
Yeah.
I'm putting you on the spot.
I think I will.
Okay.
I think I will.
Let me know if you need help.
Well, I don't have a stream tomorrow, but I have a stream on Wednesday. So
Okay.
Tomorrow's the little one's birthday, so
right. Okay.
Try to not to do too many crypto things.
All right. Good dad. Good dad. All right, guys.
you gotta stake some hex 5555 for the little one.
Good one, Kong. You got to market buy some hex and then stake it tomorrow. All right, guys. It has been a blast. Thank you, Zen, for being here. Crypto Kong, Coach, everybody that participated. It was a blessing. And we do this space every Monday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern and Saturdays at 10 a.m. Eastern. So we will have another space this coming Saturday at 10 a.m. Eastern. We'll put it up on Twitter 3 days prior, Wednesday morning. And you guys can mark your calendars and we will see you then. Thank you so much, everybody, for showing up. Have a good night. See you guys. Thanks for being here.